You're a Fire Nation soldier? Zuko exclaimed in surprise when the man lowered his mask and turned to them. He recognized the eyes, the hairstyle, the familiar shape of his face. It was a sight he had grown up so surrounded by that he hadn't even realized it would ever become something that was familiar, instead of something that just was. The other three under the bison tensed at his proclamation, but the stranger just shrugged. I was, he answered calmly. My name is Ch2. He directed the group to a small clearing big enough for Appa to land in and took no time at all to start a small fire. Katara looked at Zuko oddly when the boy stood several feet back and refused to help. Usually, the Fire Nation team couldn't wait to help start a fire, but this time he didn't go near it, sitting several feet back from his countrymen's flames. Ch2 didn't seem to be a bender, but Zuko didn't want any chance that he'd be recognized, didn't want to instinctually reach for flames that wouldn't respond to him and let this man see his failure. The man bowed to Aang as the fire started to blaze. One of the perfect, respectful motions drilled into every soldier with the hands held just so. I have heard rumors, but I hadn't known if they were true. It is an honor to meet you, young Avatar. You, are the Avatar, aren't you? Yep, I'm Aang. These are my friends Katara, Sokka, and Lee. Zuko interrupted. He was the only member of the gang of the five who hadn't removed his disguise, and as far as he was concerned, the blue spirit mask would stay on until Ch2 was nothing but a speck behind Appa. Sokka looked at him curiously. Wait, your name's Lee? You told me it was... Zuko planted a foot on the other teen's chest and pushed him into the ground. Lee, he insisted, and Sokka's eyes widened as he finally got it. How was this idiot also one of the smartest people he'd ever met? Why couldn't the world just make sense? Right, Lee. I forgot, I misheard it. Must be the accent. This was a moment of silence in which no one dared mention that Zuko didn't have an accent. Oh well, it didn't really matter, as Ch2 knew he was using a fake name, as long as no one spilled his real one. The banished Prince Zuko hadn't been seen in 3 years. No one should have any reason to suspect who he was without reason. Oh, Aang said, suddenly cluing in as well. Is this about the poster and the, Horrifyingly, his hands began to rise to his head, as though he was about to gesture to the scar. Before Zuko could do anything to stop idiot number 2, Katara leaned over and grasped the other boy's hand. So Mr. Ch2, why did you save us? She interrupted, sufficiently distracting Aang as the airbender marveled at their linked hands. Ch2 looked between the group, and Zuko was starting to get really tired of how some of his absolutely best glares were being hidden by the wooden mask. Still, after a moment of hesitation, the man shook his head. He looked into the mask's eyes. The Avatar trusts you. That is all I need to know to trust you as well. Zuko couldn't hold back a snort. That's a terrible metric. Aang trusts everybody. Aang had trusted Jet. Zuko let out a loud groan. Lee, come on, man. We talked about this with the boomerang. Do you not want him to trust you? Of course I want him to trust me, but have you met Aang? Zuko gestured to the airbender. Aang had many good qualities. A good judge of character wasn't one of them. Case in point, he didn't even seem upset by their argument. The monks taught me you should always give someone a chance to prove their trustworthiness, and not to judge based on preconceived notions. Zuko gestured at the boy again, and now even Sokka was looking a little dubious. You can trust the blue spirit, Katara interrupted, turning to the Fire Nation soldier that was looking more and more concerned about the fate of the world. He's a good guy. He's been helping us out a lot. That was unexpected. Zuko scowled under his mask, but since no one could see it, he ended up just slouching back against the wall of this strange crater. It was a perfect circle, except for the path leading to it. He was worried at first it had been earthbent. Then his mind started to stray to circular earth-bent areas, and his thoughts away before he could reveal the weakness he had with his temper. Fine, whatever. All these is trust me. But don't think that just because Aang trusts you, that means I do. Who are you, and why did you help us? Sokka frowned and straightened from where he had been idly scratching the ground with his stick. I'd like to hear that too. I think we all would, Katara added, her eyes finally creasing into the distasteful stare that had followed Zuko everywhere the first few weeks. Ch2 nodded, seeming unconcerned by the scrutiny. I serve a man. More than a man, really. He's a myth. But he's real, a living legend. Zhang the deserter. Zuko straightened, eyes widened, and was grateful that no one was looking his direction. Admiral Zhang was one of the names on Uncle's list of people who could help him. He hadn't been a deserter at the time of the letter, but a lot could happen in 3 years, and he was the kind of person who would help someone who'd been disgraced and banished. Well, let's just say it wasn't entirely surprising for the type of person to become a deserter. Zuko listened intently as Ch2 began to explain Zhang's desertion, trying to find a way to cut in and insist that they meet with him. Lucky he hadn't actually had to do anything at all, as Ch2 started hinting that the deserter could be Aang's firebending master. Sokka had shot him a look when Aang got excited about a firebender who wasn't aligned with the Fire Lord, but Zuko hardly noticed. His heart was pounding, liable to beat out of his chest. Zhang was supposed to be a phenomenal master. He taught Zhao, who had been a formidable master even back when Zuko had been at court. If Zhang was that good, maybe he could even help Zuko to touch the flame again. Sokka didn't seem to follow that logic, though, as he protested. We're not going to find some crazy firebender, not when... He glanced towards Zuko again, but Ch2 was already interrupting. He's not crazy, he's a genius, and he's the perfect person to train the Avatar. That's why I followed you into the festival. The Water Tribe shook his head as he stood. Look, thanks for the help, but we should stay, Zuko interrupted, and Sokka turned to him with a gaping jaw. Aang isn't going to get another opportunity like this. Finding a half-decent firebender who deserted and managed to avoid execution is practically impossible. I would have put my money on never finding someone like that, if I had any. Even Uncle probably wouldn't have gone that far into treason, no matter what the help he offered a banished traitor. Uncle. He needed to meet with Zhang and get news to his uncle. And he would do anything to make it happen, including possibly telling the truth. But he wanted to avoid that as long as he could. In the cave, his secrets had been the only thing he could claim as his own, and he wasn't willing to give up those now. Sokka faltered. But what about... He was unwilling to give up secrets as well. Unfortunately, Aang, while occasionally trustworthy with a secret, didn't often pick up on what did and didn't constitute sensitive information. We don't know that the Blue Spirit will be able to firebend in time, Sokka. I'd love to have him as a masker, but we can't trust that, Zuko interrupted, ignoring Ch2's curious look. Aang had already let the raccoon cat out of the bag, so he'd just have to charge forward to get to his goal, ignoring everything else. He was used to that. So we need to go ahead with a plan B now. Ch2 isn't exaggerating when he says that Zhang is known for being a master. He trains some of the best of the best. He knows everything there is to know about firebending. Maybe he could help get your firebending back, Katara exclaimed excitedly. Zuko fought not to grind his teeth, but realizing that no one could see it, and decided to give in to the temptation. Yes, Katara, his lack of firebending was exactly the thing he wanted to highlight at this moment. Ch2 looked between them hesitantly. I'm not sure how anyone could lose their bending, but Zhang could definitely help with whatever it is. Like I said, he's a legend. Aang perked, presumably about to explain exactly how a firebender lost their bending, but Sokka lunged forward to cover the airbender's mouth with his hand. How about we not tell the stranger in the woods all about our friend Blue Spirit Lee's past for him? Aang deflated, sending a wide-eyed, apologetic look to Zuko. All right, sorry. Zuko took a deep, audible breath in through the nose and out through the mouth before forcing himself to relax. Whatever, let's go. If he agrees to teach Aang, it'll be a long day for you tomorrow. It was as much of an acceptance of the apology he was willing to give at the moment, and in that strange, instinctive way of his, Aang seemed to understand that as he sent Zuko a warm smile. Suddenly, and without warning, men, adorned in outfits made of leaves and brandishing spears, fell from the trees. Zuko wasn't proud of it, but for a moment he wasn't there in the clearing with a small group of maybe friends and a man who had connected him with someone on his uncle's list. For a moment he was 13 again, in pain and stumbling. He just tripped over a rock and looked up in time to see a group of children drop from the trees and come for him. At that moment he was thinking the exact same words he thought then. Not again. When the memory faded, he was panting with his dual down in his hand, surrounded by a circle of men groaning and clutching their heads or unconscious. Only one man was still fighting, and at the moment, his blades were trapping his spear so that it rested above Zuko's head. The firebender stepped forward, closer to his opponent to where he was well out of range of the spear blade. The shaft would leave bruises, but that would even be difficult if Zuko didn't let the man pull back for a proper swing. And he didn't intend to. The step also forced the attacker's spear forward, as the cross-dueled out blades moved along the spear shaft. Zuko refused to lower his arms. The opponent moved, jerking as though to pull his spear out of Zuko's grasp, but the move unbalanced the man, and a quick jab of his newly freed blades made the man drop the weapon entirely, and with a single kick, Zuko sent the figure sprawling. Zuko immediately whirled and pointed his twin swords at Che, ignoring the stunned and incredulous looks of his traveling companions, who were so stunned that they still hadn't even drawn their weapons. "I told you I didn't trust you," he snarled. "You set us up." "No, well, not intentionally." The last man whom Zuko had defeated sat up with a glare at Che, though he didn't try to move any further when Zuko shifted so that he had one blade pointed at each of the conscious Fire Nation men. "Zhang Zhang told you not to look for the Avatar." "Wait, you know these guys?" Sokka asked, and Zuko snarled. "Oh yeah, Lin Yi and I, we all work for Zhang Zhang." "If this is the welcoming committee, I think we'll pass," Zuko answered sarcastically, and Zuko had a pang of regret on missing out on this opportunity to meet with someone from the list. However, no part of him had calmed down from the earlier flashback, and if this was what Zhang Zhang was really like, he could wait for the next opportunity. If Zhang Zhang had lost his honor when he deserted, Zuko wanted no part of it. No, it's just, well, I wasn't supposed to come see you guys, but the Avatar needs a firebending master, and Zhang Zhang is a great man and a fantastic bender. You aren't going to find another master like him. Not with how the Fire Nation is now. If I can just get him to talk to you." "Zhang Zhang doesn't want to talk, Che," the man on the ground protested. "Except to you. You need to listen to him this time." Che swallowed, but his face then morphed into determination. "Come with me to the camp. I can convince him. I know I can. He can be your firebending master." Aang shared an uncertain glance with the other three, including Zuko. His earlier enthusiasm was muted and dull. Katara bit her lip. "I don't know, Aang. This seems dangerous to me. I think we should head out." Sokka looked around the clearing, eyeing Zuko for an especially long moment before shaking his head once. "Come on, Katara. I think Che's right. We need a firebending master, and we may not find another. It can't be that bad to try, besides Zlee!" Zuko interrupted loudly. "Seriously?" "Yes. Fine. Lee just took out like 5 guys single-handedly without bending. I think we can handle it." All guys turned to Zuko, and the Fire Nation teen had to fight back a groan. He just spent the last few years trapped in a cave with only Jet for company. Why did they want him to be the final voice on all decisions? He didn't like this. Didn't at all. He felt like he was crawling out of his skin. He wanted nothing more than let his hands catch fire and punch a few balls of flame just to get this gross, sticky feeling to stop festering under his skin. He pushed his chi, raced it down the path. That should have been his heart's fire shooting from him. But there was nothing. He couldn't even make a puff of smoke, not a single spark. In the end, it was that. The hope that his flame could return with instruction, mixed with the childish desired trust in his uncle, that had him nodding. "Collect the spears," he commanded, and the other 3 teens hurried to comply. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary," Che said weakly, and Zuko cast him a glare. It was still hidden by the mask, but the speed at which Zuko's head shot at Che seemed to get the point across. "I'm not going to give them what they need to stab us in the back. They work for Zhang Zhang? Fine. They can pick up their weapons from him." Che hesitated, but the others had already collected their weapons, and he seemed to decide that was a little battle that would be smarter not to fight. He cast one last look at the disarmed and defeated men and began to lead them through the woods. Zuko nodded for Katara to follow him first. With her waterbending, she was the most versatile in the combatants, the most reactive if needed. Sokka and Aang followed her, and Zuko took up the rear, swords in hand and senses on high alert. Sokka slid behind Aang and walked backwards to whisper to Zuko. "Don't you think the lead thing is going a little far? I mean, I get it, you're a wanted criminal, big deal. It seems like literally everyone else here is too. I think you could relax for a bit. I mean, are you even on Fire Nation land anymore? It's not that, Sokka, it's... I can't let them know who I am. I can't explain why, but trust me, it would be bad. Is this part of the Fire Lord himself burned your face off thing? Zuko felt a thrill of fear. Maybe don't mention that either. Trust me, please. Sokka was silent for a long moment. Okay, I'll let the others know, but if you're keeping some big secret from us, it's gonna come out eventually. None of us have ever managed to keep a secret from the others for more than a few days. Jet's whole "you" thing was kinda my record. I'm honored, Zuko said dryly, purposely looking down the path as Zuko sighed and went to whisper in Aang's ear. Zuko let out a deep breath. He may not have been entirely honest with Sokka on the ship. He didn't lie per se, but he had certainly learned his lesson about being careful not to give away too much. Sokka knew that he was the son of an important political Fire Nation family. He knew that Zuko had convinced his uncle to let him into a war council, and that he had spoken out against a plan that horrified him to this day with its viciousness and apathy. He knew that Zuko had been branded by the Fire Lord himself for cowardice and disrespect. He didn't know that his important family was the royal family, that his uncle was the Dragon of the West, or the Fire Lord was Zuko's father. Zuko didn't want him to know, didn't want any of them to know. He was already someone who should be their enemy based on his nationality alone. He knew that even now Katara didn't completely trust him. Sokka, he wasn't sure. He thought the boy trusted Zuko, but had no doubt the team would never stop expecting the Prince of the Fire Nation to stab them in the back, banished or not. Aang probably wouldn't see a problem with it, but he didn't count. Maybe he was being paranoid? It was possible that they knew him well enough that his heritage wouldn't be a problem. They might listen when he said that he had denounced his father, his throne, and his nation's war during one of the countless hours he spent in Jet's tender care. Not his nation, though. Never his nation or his people. They might believe that he had no reason to want to return to his helm in court, that no one could use him against an uncaring father, and that the average person in the Fire Nation has as much reason as the rest of the world to want an end to the war. They might, but he wasn't taking that chance. Not when he had nowhere else to go. Maybe once he found Uncle. Once staying with the Avatar could actually be choice instead of necessity. But not now. If his face was revealed now, or if one of the three companions accidentally said his name, it would all be over. They would recognize him. He was sure. Court gossip spread through the nation and well into the colonies. They would know who he was, what he'd done. They would tell the others. Maybe that had been a bad idea. We're here, Ch2 said, gesturing to a simple temporary hut constructed out of mud and river plants. The river clay looked burned in shape in moments using firebending. I should go in first, make my case. You guys wait in here. He gestured to a closer hut. For a moment, the hut was heavy with awkward tension. Katara and Aang clearly wanted to ask about why he was hiding things. Zuko was just as obviously not willing to talk about it. Finally, after a moment, Sokka attempted to lift the mood. So, kinda crazy that this whole little community of deserters is just hanging out in the forest like a few miles from a super Fire Nation-y town, huh? Yeah. You would think they would have been discovered by now, Aang agreed readily. Zuko frowned, thinking back to the odd puppet. One calling themselves Fire Lord was a mirror image of Uncle Iroh, even to the point of breathing fire in the Dragon of the West technique. He thought of the wanted poster notice board on the edge of the village limits rather than at the town square. He thought of the townspeople, willing to watch soldiers chase the Avatar without moving a muscle themselves to attempt to intercept him. He thought of how there hadn't been a single image, painting, sculpture, sketch, or anything of Ozai in the entire town. Maybe it wasn't so surprising. Maybe the deserters weren't as separated from the Fire Nation society as they would like people to believe. He opened his mouth to say so, but before he could, Ch2 stumbled back into the room. Aang perked. Can I see Zhang Zhang now? The man collapsed to the floor. He won't see you. He's very angry that I brought you here and wants you to leave. Why won't he see me? He said you aren't ready because you haven't mastered water and earth yet. Wait, how does he know that? He saw the way you walked into camp. He can tell. Zuko straightened, about to insist he would speak to the man, but Aang beat him to it. I'm going in anyway. The airbender hurried out of the room before anyone could protest. Zuko eyed the flapping tent entrance. This could be bad. It could be good, Sokka said with the optimism of someone who was saying something just to be optimistic, not because they thought it was a likely outcome. A few moments later, Zhongzhong's tent started glowing and booming. An unfamiliar voice echoed through the river shore. Told you, Zuko muttered. Actually, Katara said thoughtfully, looks like Avatar State stuff. So things are either going well or monumentally badly. Great, Zuko deadpanned. Moments later, Aang rushed from the hut with a blinding grin on his face. Guess what? Zhongzhong agreed to be my firebending master. That's great, Aang, Katara enthused, and Zuko felt a weight lift from his shoulders. They would be staying. He had a chance. Those all settled out, mats and sleeping bags, preparing to sleep. Zuko then moved from the wall of the hut, watching as they all slowly drifted off to sleep. It was only then that he silently left the hut and made his way down to the river bank. He could feel flames inside the hut. He knew Zhongzhong was still awake. The boy took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway. It was time to play some pie show.